A flicker of silver light cuts through the darkness of Voss Castle's grand hall. Dorian Voss, the immortal vampire king who hasn't felt his heartbeat in over a century, stops mid-step, his pale red eyes widening. A trembling girl stands before his throne, her dirt-stained fingers clutching a glowing ring. His mother's ring. The same ring buried with Queen Vespera Voss 100 years ago in a tomb sealed with ancient magic that should incinerate any mortal who touches it. The end will shatter everything you thought you knew about destiny. Before we dive deeper, we'd love to know, are you team destined love or team love is a choice? Drop your answer in the comments and hit that like button if you believe some bonds transcend even death itself. Now, settle in as we enter the shadows of Umbra City, where an immortal king's frozen heart is about to crack open. The silver glow reflects off the marble floors as Dorian stands frozen. He had searched for that ring for 20 years after his mother's death, had torn apart the kingdom. The royal crypt had been sealed with blood wards he himself strengthened, wards designed to kill any intruder. Yet here it was, cradled in the palm of a mortal girl, alive and glowing with his mother's magic. The girl's threadbare cloak was torn and stained. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves around a face sharp with hunger. But her eyes, storm gray and defiant, sent a shock of recognition through him. 3 nights ago, he'd saved her from bandits in the lower districts, a brief encounter he'd dismissed as meaningless. "Where did you get that ring?" His voice echoed with supernatural resonance, making the girl flinch. She clutched it tighter, lifting her chin despite her fear. "I didn't steal it. My name is Sera Trace, and I found it in the crypts beneath the city. It was calling to me." The ring pulsed brighter, sending silver sparks cascading around her. Dorian's chest tightened. Impossible, since Cassandra Luna's betrayal had turned his heart to stone 70 years ago. Drop a heartbreak emoji if you've ever sworn off love after heartbreak. Behind him, a lion knight gasped. He had served Queen Vespera. He knew what those wards should have done. "When the earthquake opened the crypt, I fell through," Sera continued, exhaustion thick in her voice. "The ring was alone on a stone pedestal. When I touched it, it glowed, and I heard a woman's voice. She said I should find her son." Dorian's world shattered. His mother's voice. "What did she say?" he demanded, suddenly standing directly before Sera with supernatural speed. "Exactly what—" The throne room doors burst open with a crack of dark magic. A cold laugh echoed through sudden darkness. Cassandra Luna stepped into the hall, her violet eyes blazing with possessive rage as they fixed on Sera. "So the rumors are true. A little mortal thief has stolen what should have been mine. Stay with us, because this is where the story takes a turn no one saw coming." Dorian moved before thought, placing himself between Cassandra and Sera. His fangs elongated, his red eyes flashing with ancient power. "Touch her," he said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, "and I will show you exactly why they call me king." Sera stood behind him, the ring still glowing, breath coming in gasps. She had no idea that the ring she carried was the key to a century-old prophecy. No idea that she had just awakened something in Dorian Voss that he thought Cassandra had killed forever, the capacity to care. But to understand why this moment was shattering a century of stone-cold control, you need to know how they first met. 3 nights ago, in the blood-soaked alleys of Umbra City. 3 nights ago, in the blood-soaked alleys of Umbra City. Dorian Voss walked alone through the lower districts, his crimson eyes hidden beneath a hooded cloak that concealed his royal bearing. The castle had become suffocating, a tomb of marble and memory where silence pressed against him like a physical weight. So he walked, through the forgotten streets where mortals struggled to survive, through the shadows where his kind rarely ventured unless hunting. He told himself he sought solitude, but the truth was simpler and more pathetic. He was searching for something to feel besides the endless crushing nothing that had defined his existence for 70 years. The scream cut through the night like a blade. Dorian's head snapped toward the sound, a narrow alley between two crumbling tenements. His supernatural hearing picked up the shuffle of boots, the rasp of crude laughter, the sharp gasps of someone trying to breathe through fear. He should have kept walking. A vampire king didn't involve himself in mortal squabbles, didn't risk exposure for strangers, didn't care. But his feet moved anyway. The alley reeked of rotting garbage and desperation. 3 men, bandits by the look of their mismatched weapons and opportunistic grins, had cornered a girl against the brick wall. She was small, malnourished, her dress more patches than original fabric, but she wasn't cowering. A broken bottle clutched in her shaking hand, blood dripping from a cut on her palm where she gripped the jagged glass. Her gray eyes blazed with defiant fury, even as her body trembled with exhaustion and fear. "Back off!" she snarled, slashing the bottle in a wide arc that made the nearest bandit laugh. "Feisty little rat," the man sneered, pulling a rusted knife. "Makes it more fun." Dorian moved. One moment he stood at the alley's entrance. The next he was between the girl and her attackers, moving with the terrifying speed that made mortals whisper about demons in the dark. The lead bandit's eyes widened. "What the—" Dorian's hand closed around the man's throat, lifting him off the ground with effortless strength. His hood had fallen back, revealing pale skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight and eyes that burned like embers. "Leave," Dorian said softly. The word carried supernatural weight, a compulsion woven into the command that made the other 2 bandits stumble backward, their instincts screaming danger, even if their minds couldn't comprehend what stood before them. The man in Dorian's grasp clawed uselessly at his iron grip, choking. "Now!" Dorian added, releasing him. The bandit hit the ground, gasping. All 3 scrambled away, fear overriding greed, disappearing into the night with the survival instinct of prey, recognizing a predator. Silence fell over the alley. Dorian turned to face the girl, expecting gratitude, fear, the usual reactions mortals had when confronted with what he was. Instead, she was already walking away. "Wait," he said, surprised by his own words. She paused but didn't turn around. Her shoulders were rigid, her hand still bleeding from the broken bottle she'd dropped. "You're injured," Dorian continued, taking a step closer. "I'm fine," she muttered, her voice tight with the kind of pride that came from having nothing left but dignity. He could see she wasn't fine, could see the way she favored her left leg, the bruises already forming on her ribs, the tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with cold and everything to do with shock, catching up to adrenaline. Tell me in the comments if you've ever been too proud to accept help when you desperately needed it. At least let me... Dorian reached for the coin purse at his belt, the one he carried more from habit than necessity. He pulled it free and held it out to her. She finally turned, her gray eyes suspicious as they fixed on the small leather pouch. "Why?" she asked simply. The question caught him off guard. Why indeed? He didn't help people, didn't involve himself in mortal suffering, had spent 70 years perfecting the art of not caring about anything or anyone. "Because you fought," he heard himself say. "You were outnumbered, outmatched, and you still fought." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or the painful recognition of being seen when she'd spent years being invisible. Her hand reached out slowly, almost expecting him to snatch the purse away like some cruel joke. When her fingers closed around the leather, her eyes widened with something that looked dangerously close to hope. "I don't know what you are," she whispered, her gaze traveling over his too pale skin, his too bright eyes. "But thank you." Dorian nodded once, pulling his hood back up to hide his face. He should have asked her name, should have asked if she had somewhere safe to go, should have done something more than press coins into the hand of a starving girl and disappear back into the shadows like the monster he was. But he was the vampire king, and vampire kings didn't form attachments to mortal girls in alleyways. So he turned and walked away, his supernatural hearing picking up the sound of her ragged breathing, the soft sob she tried to muffle, the whispered words, "No one's been kind to me in so long." The words followed him through the streets, echoed in his mind as he returned to the castle, haunted him in ways he didn't understand and refused to examine. He assumed it ended there, a chance encounter, a moment of uncharacteristic compassion. Nothing more. He had no way of knowing that the girl, Sera Trace, would crawl into the crypts beneath the city 2 nights later during an earthquake, had no way of knowing she would find his mother's ring resting on ancient stone, waiting, had no way of knowing that Queen Vespera's magic had been waiting for her. If you're wondering how Sera survived the blood wards that should have killed her instantly, keep watching, because in the next chapter, we discover the truth about Vespera's prophecy and why Sera's survival was no accident. Destiny, it seemed, had been moving long before Dorian Voss walked into that alley. It had been moving since the night his mother died, whispering a prophecy with her last breath, a prophecy about a mortal girl who would carry her ring and awaken her son's frozen heart. The East Tower room was silent except for the crackling of the fireplace and Sera's nervous breathing. Dorian stood by the window, his back to her, crimson eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the glass. A lion knight had escorted Sera here after the confrontation with Cassandra, posting guards at every entrance as commanded. Now the 3 of them occupied the room like pieces on a chessboard, waiting for someone to make the first move. It was Sera who broke the silence. "I know you don't believe me," she said quietly, her fingers still wrapped around the glowing ring. "But I'm telling the truth. I didn't steal this." Dorian turned slowly, his aristocratic face unreadable. "Then explain. From the beginning." Sera swallowed hard, her gray eyes darting to Elion before settling back on the vampire king. 2 nights ago, there was an earthquake, a bad one. The building I was sheltering in, an abandoned warehouse near the eastern docks, started collapsing. I ran, but the street gave way beneath me. Her voice steadied as she continued, as if reliving the memory gave her strength. I fell through the ground into darkness. When I woke up, I was lying on cold stone in some kind of underground chamber, ancient. The walls were carved with symbols I didn't recognize, and the air felt heavy, like it was watching me. Dorian's eyes narrowed. "Describe the chamber." "Circular," Sera said immediately, "maybe 30 feet across. There were stone columns carved to look like dragons, and in the center was a raised platform with—" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the ring. "With this, just sitting there on a pedestal, glowing in the darkness like it had been waiting." "Impossible," Elion breathed, speaking for the first time. "The royal crypt is sealed. The entrance collapsed decades ago, and the blood wards should have killed her the moment she crossed the threshold," Dorian finished, his voice hard. "I know. Tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced something that defied all logical explanation." Sera's chin lifted. "I don't know what wards are. I just know that when I saw the ring, something inside me said to pick it up, so I did." Her fingers trembled slightly. "The moment I touched it, light exploded through the chamber, silver and gold so bright I had to close my eyes, and that's when I heard her." Dorian went very still. "Heard who?" "A woman's voice." Sera's eyes were distant now, remembering. Warm, kind. She said, "Don't be afraid, child. You were meant to find this. Take it to my son. He's been alone too long." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dorian's hands clenched at his sides. "My mother has been dead for 100 years. "I know," Sera whispered, "because she told me. She said she'd been waiting a century for someone like me to fall into that crypt. Someone who could survive the wards. Someone who could carry her message. Elian moved closer, his scholarly eyes fixed on the ring with a mixture of awe and fear. Your Majesty, if what she's saying is true, if the ring accepted her, then perhaps Queen Vespera's final prophecy wasn't just legend. Dorian's jaw tightened. Don't. You know what your mother said before she died. Elian pressed gently, that she would leave a sign, a mortal girl who would... I said don't. The command cracked through the room with supernatural force, making the torches flicker. Sera flinched but didn't back down. Instead, she did something that made both men freeze. She stood and walked directly toward Dorian, the ring cupped in her palm. You want proof? She asked, her voice stronger now. Here. She held the ring out between them. The silver band pulsed with soft light, the same light that had been constant since she'd found it. But as she brought it closer to Dorian, something changed. The glow intensified. Silver threads of magic spiraled upward from the ring, reaching toward Dorian like living things. The light shifted from silver to gold, growing brighter with each inch. Sera moved closer until the entire room was bathed in radiance that seemed to emanate from the ring itself. And then, impossible as it seemed, the light formed shapes, translucent images flickering in the air like memories made solid. A woman with Dorian's sharp features and gentle eyes, her hand reaching out as if to touch her son's face. Elian gasped. Queen Vespera! Dorian staggered backward, his composure shattering completely. His crimson eyes were wide, fixed on the spectral image of his mother hovering between him and Sera. The image didn't speak, but the expression on her face said everything: recognition, love, approval. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the image faded. The light dimmed back to its gentle silver glow, leaving only Sera standing there with the ring, breathing hard. Recognizes you, she whispered. It knows you're her son. Dorian's hand shot out, gripping the edge of a nearby table for support. For a creature who hadn't needed to breathe in over a century, he looked like he was drowning. Elian stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, the wards around Queen Vespera's tomb were designed to kill anyone with malicious intent. They were keyed to her bloodline magic, to protect the relic from those who would use it for power. He looked at Sera with new understanding. If this girl survived, if the ring not only accepted her, but revealed your mother's image to prove its authenticity, then she's telling the truth. But why her? Dorian's voice was raw. Why now? Sera met his crimson gaze steadily. I don't know, but your mother said I was meant to find it, that I was meant to bring it to you. She paused, then added softly, she said you'd been in the dark long enough. If you're wondering what Queen Vespera's prophecy actually said, hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter reveals a truth that will change everything. Dorian looked at Sera, truly looked at her, for the first time since she'd appeared in his throne room, saw past the torn dress and street dirt to the girl beneath, saw the fear in her storm-gray eyes. Yes, but also the courage it took to stand before a vampire king and tell an impossible truth. Saw the way she held his mother's ring like it was sacred, the way the ring glowed brighter in her presence than it ever had in his. Where did you go? He asked quietly. After you found the ring? Sera blinked at the unexpected question. I climbed out through the rubble, made my way to the surface. I knew I had to bring it here, to the castle, but I was afraid. It took me 2 days to work up the courage to approach the gates. 2 days, Dorian repeated. You spent 2 days on the streets, alone, carrying the most valuable magical artifact in the kingdom, and you didn't try to sell it, didn't try to use it for your own gain. It wasn't mine to sell, Sera said simply. The answer was so honest, so fundamentally decent, that it hit Dorian like a physical blow. This girl, This starving, homeless mortal who had every reason to be selfish, every justification for keeping or selling what she'd found, had risked everything to return something that didn't belong to her. Because a dead queen asked her to, because she thought it was the right thing to do. A lion cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, what would you like me to do with Miss Trace?" Dorian studied Sera's face for a long moment. The hunger-sharp angles, the defiant gray eyes, the trembling hands that held his mother's ring like a promise. "She stays," he said finally. "Under my protection. No one touches her, no one questions her, and tomorrow we're going to find out exactly why my mother's magic chose her." 300 miles away in a tower that shouldn't exist on any map, Cassandra Luna's eyes snapped. Open! She sat bolt upright in the darkness, her violet eyes blazing with sudden fury as invisible threads of magic thrummed through her consciousness. Someone had awakened something ancient, something powerful, something that belonged to her. Her pale fingers clenched the silk sheets as she extended her senses outward, following the magical signature across mountains and forests, through the veil of wards she'd spent decades learning to penetrate, until she found its source, Voss Castle, and more specifically, Queen Vespera's ring. The ring that should have been hers 70 years ago, before Dorian discovered her betrayal and cast her out like common trash. The ring Vespera had promised her the night before everything fell apart. The ring she'd spent the better part of a century searching for, only to find the royal crypt sealed with blood wards even she couldn't break. Until 2 nights ago, when she'd finally found a way. The earthquake spell had cost her dearly. 3 years of stored power, burned in a single catastrophic ritual. But it had worked. The wards had shattered. The crypt had opened. And when she'd returned to claim her prize, the ring was gone. Cassandra rose from the bed, dark magic crackling around her fingertips as rage coursed through her veins. She'd assumed another tomb robber had beaten her to it. Some foolish treasure hunter who would try to sell it on the black market, making it easy to track and retrieve. But this signature, this warm golden resonance mixing with the ring's silver light, was something else entirely. It was activated. The ring hadn't just been taken. It had been awakened. Tell me in the comments if you think Cassandra is about to make a very dangerous mistake. She moved to the window, her silk nightgown billowing around her like smoke as she stared in the direction of Voss Castle. With a whispered incantation, she summoned a scrying mirror, a disk of black glass that materialized in the air before her. "Show me," she commanded, feeding her magic into the spell. "Show me who holds Vespera's ring." The glass rippled like water, then cleared to reveal a scene that made Cassandra's breath catch. The East Tower, Dorian's private chambers. And there he was, her Dorian, though he'd never truly been hers, standing rigid as stone, his crimson eyes fixed on something Cassandra couldn't quite see from this angle. Then the mirror's view shifted, and she saw her, a girl, mortal, filthy, wearing rags that belonged in a gutter, her dark hair tangled, her face smudged with dirt. And in her palm, glowing like a captured star, was Vespera's ring. The air around Cassandra turned freezing as her fury manifested physically. Frost spread across the window pane. The scrying mirror cracked down the center but held, still showing that impossible scene. The girl was alive, standing in Dorian's presence, holding the ring, and from the way Dorian looked at her, with something that almost resembled wonder, the ring had accepted her. "No," Cassandra whispered, her voice deadly soft. "No, no, no." She watched as the ring began to glow brighter, silver light intensifying as the girl moved it closer to Dorian. Watched as the light shifted to gold, as magical threads spiraled upward as... Cassandra's heart stopped. A spectral image formed in the light, translucent but unmistakable. Queen Vespera. The image reached toward Dorian with maternal tenderness, and even through the scrying mirror, Cassandra could see the devastating impact it had on him, could see the way his composure shattered, the way his hand gripped the table for support, the way he looked at that worthless street rat like she'd given him back something precious he'd thought lost forever. The scrying mirror exploded. Shards of black glass rained down around Cassandra as she stood trembling with rage so profound it made her magic writhe beneath her skin like a living thing. 70 years. 70 years she'd spent searching for that ring. 70 years of research, of dark rituals, of sacrifices and bargains with entities that would make lesser mages go mad. All to prove herself worthy of the Voss bloodline. All to reclaim what Vespera had promised her before Dorian's self-righteous fury destroyed everything, and some filthy mortal child had waltzed into the crypt, picked up the ring, and survived? Worse, the ring had chosen her. If you're getting chills from Cassandra's obsession, smash that like button because she's about to cross a line there's no coming back from. Cassandra's mind raced, piecing together the implications. The ring only activated for those Vespera's magic deemed worthy. That was the whole point of the Blood Wards, to ensure only someone with pure intent, someone the magic recognized, could claim it. Cassandra had failed that test 70 years ago when Vespera's dying magic had rejected her touch. But this girl, this nobody from the streets had passed where Cassandra Luna, powerful sorceress, master of dark arts, Dorian's former beloved, had failed. The injustice of it was suffocating. She moved to her wardrobe with predatory grace, selecting a gown of deep crimson that shimmered like fresh blood. As she dressed, her mind cataloged everything she knew about Vespera's final prophecy, the whispered legend that the queen had left instructions for her son's salvation. Cassandra had always assumed it was metaphorical, a mother's dying wish for her son to find happiness. But what if it wasn't? What if Vespera had actually planned for this, had embedded some failsafe in her magic that would activate after her death, designed to lead Dorian to... what? Love? Healing? The thought made Cassandra's lip curl with disgust. She'd loved Dorian once, in her own way. Had wanted the power and prestige of being his queen, yes, but she'd also wanted him, had wanted those crimson eyes to look at her with something other than cold duty, had wanted to be the one to thaw his frozen heart after Vespera's death. Instead, he discovered her plan to usurp his throne, had cast her out without mercy, and had spent the next 7 decades becoming even more emotionally dead than before. And now, this girl, this mortal, was undoing all of that with a single ring? Unacceptable. Cassandra fastened a cloak around her shoulders, dark magic already gathering for the teleportation spell that would take her to Voss Castle. She would go tonight, would confront Dorian and that wretched girl, would take back what should have been hers from the beginning, and if the girl stood in her way... If that little rat awakened what I couldn't, Cassandra whispered to the empty room, her violet eyes glowing with malevolent purpose, then she doesn't deserve to live. The decision settled over her like armor. She would kill the girl, would take the ring from her cooling corpse, and would prove to Dorian, to Vespera's lingering magic, to the entire kingdom, that she, Cassandra Luna, was the only one worthy of standing beside the vampire king, the only one who deserved his power, his throne, his heart. Dark magic swirled around her like a storm as she began the spell, her whispered incantations filling the tower with shadows that had no business existing in the mortal realm. In Voss Castle, 300 miles away, Dorian felt a cold shiver run down his spine, an instinct honed over centuries of survival. Somewhere in the darkness, something ancient and dangerous had just set its sights on his castle, on Sera, and he had no idea the nightmare that was coming. Subscribe now because the next chapter brings Cassandra face to face with Sera. And when these two finally meet, the consequences will shake the entire kingdom. Dawn was still hours away when a lion knight knocked on the door of Dorian's private study. "Enter," came the clipped response. Elian stepped inside to find the vampire king standing by the window, his crimson eyes fixed on the east tower where Sera slept under heavy guard. He hadn't moved from that spot in 3 hours, hadn't spoken since ordering Sera's protection. "Your Majesty," Elian began carefully, "there's something you need to see." Dorian didn't turn. "If this is about the prophecy—" "It is." Elian's voice was firm. "And before you refuse, you should know that I've served your family for over 2 centuries. I stood beside your mother the night she died. I heard her final words." He paused. "You deserve to know the truth, even if you don't want to hear it." That got Dorian's attention. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "What truth?" "Come with me." Elian led him through corridors Dorian had walked 1,000 times, but instead of heading toward the main archives, he turned down a narrow servant's passage that opened onto a spiral staircase, descending into darkness. "Where are we going?" Dorian asked, though something in his chest already knew. "Your mother's private study, the real one." The stairs ended at a heavy oak door sealed with wards that pulsed with familiar magic, Vespera's magic. Elian placed his hand on the wood, and the wards recognized him, dissolving like morning mist. The room beyond took Dorian's breath away. It was exactly as he remembered from childhood, before his mother's murder, before everything shattered. Bookshelves lined every wall, filled with journals and spell tomes in Vespera's elegant script. Her desk sat in the center, still holding half-finished research notes, as if she'd just stepped away for a moment. But what drew Dorian's eye was the glass case on the far wall. Inside, suspended by magic, was a single piece of parchment that glowed with soft silver light. "She sealed this room the week before she died," Elian said quietly. "Made me promise not to show it to you until—" He hesitated. "Until the prophecy began to unfold." Drop a scroll in the comments if you believe some truths are meant to stay hidden until the right moment. Dorian approached the glass case slowly, as if it might shatter. His enhanced vision could make out words written in his mother's handwriting, but they seemed to shimmer and shift, resisting easy reading. "She warded it," Elian explained. "So you couldn't read it until the time was right, until someone came who matched the prophecy's conditions." He pulled a small object from his pocket, a silver key that looked like it was made of solidified moonlight. "She gave me this, said I would know when to use it." He inserted the key into a lock that hadn't been visible before. The glass case opened with a soft click, and the magical wards dissolved. The parchment drifted forward, hanging in the air at eye level, and the words stopped shifting. Dorian read his mother's final prophecy. "My beloved son, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the silence I feared has claimed you. I have seen your future in the threads of magic that bind our bloodline. I have seen the grief that will calcify your heart after my death. I have seen the betrayal that will teach you to trust no one, love nothing, feel nothing. I have seen you become a king of ice and stone, but I have also seen hope. Know this, Dorian, my son will fall to silence. His heart will freeze. Only the hand of a mortal child touched by my last light will awaken him and restore the Voss bloodline. She will come bearing my ring, the ring I have hidden, where only one pure of heart may find it. She will survive wards that would destroy any other. She will hear my voice when all others hear only silence, and she will be the key to everything you have lost. Do not turn her away. Do not let your walls destroy what I have sacrificed everything to give you, a second chance. The bloodline magic has been dying since your father's death. weakening with each passing year. You feel it, though you do not speak of it. By the time you read this, you will be the last of our kind with true power. The kingdom will be failing, though you hide it well. This girl, this mortal touched by my final blessing, will restore what was lost, not through blood, but through something far more powerful, love. The choice is yours, my son. You can cling to the vow that protects you from pain, or you can embrace the vulnerability that makes us truly alive. Choose wisely. Choose her. With all my eternal love, Vespera. The parchment settled back into the case as if the words themselves were exhausted. Dorian staggered backward, his hand gripping the edge of his mother's desk for support. The prophecy didn't just match Sera, it was Sera. Every impossible detail, the ring, the wards, the voice, even the timing. "No," he whispered. "Your Majesty." "No." Dorian's voice grew stronger, harder. "I don't accept this." Elian stepped forward, his weathered face creased with concern. "The prophecy has already begun. Sera survived the wards. The ring chose her. Your mother's magic recognized her. You cannot simply refuse." "I can refuse whatever I damn well please," Dorian snapped, his crimson eyes blazing. "I'm the vampire king. I've ruled this kingdom for over a century without needing a mortal girl to restore anything." "The bloodline magic is failing," Elian said quietly. "You know it's true. You felt it weakening. In another 50 years, there won't be enough power left to maintain the wards protecting the kingdom. Our kind will fade into legend, and everything your mother built will crumble. If you think Dorian's fear is stronger than his logic right now, hit that like button because you're absolutely right." Dorian turned away, his jaw clenched. "My mother had no right to orchestrate my future from beyond the grave. I didn't ask for a prophecy, didn't ask for some mortal savior to waltz into my life and—" He stopped, his hands curling into fists. "And make you feel again?" Elian finished gently. The words hung in the air like an accusation. "I built these walls for a reason," Dorian said, his voice dropping to something raw and dangerous. "After Mother died, after Cassandra betrayed me, after I learned that everyone I love either dies or destroys me, these walls keep me functioning, keep me ruling, keep me from living," Elian interrupted. "Your Majesty, with respect, you're not living, you're existing. There's a difference." Dorian whirled on him, fangs elongating, power crackling in the air. "Don't presume to lecture me about—" A sharp crack echoed through the castle. Both men froze as the sound of shattering wards rippled through the magical defenses. Dorian's head snapped toward the window, his enhanced senses flaring. "What was that?" Elian demanded. Dorian's eyes widened with recognition and dread. "Cassandra. She's here." He was moving before thought, supernatural speed carrying him through the corridors toward the East Tower, toward Sera. The prophecy, his walls, his carefully constructed defenses against feeling, none of it mattered anymore, because Cassandra Luna had just breached his castle's wards, and she was heading straight for the girl his mother had chosen, the girl who, despite everything, despite his resistance and fear and century-old vow, the girl who made him feel something other than empty for the first time in 70 years. As he raced through the darkness, Vespera's final words echoed in his mind. Choose her. But could he? Could he tear down walls that had taken a century to build? Could he risk his heart again when the last time nearly destroyed him? The East Tower loomed ahead, and Dorian realized with terrifying clarity that he was about to find out. Dorian reached the East Tower in seconds, his supernatural speed blurring reality as he burst through the door. Sera was awake, standing by the window with the ring clutched in her hand, but she wasn't looking at the shattered wards or the dark magic crackling across the castle grounds. She was listening, Her gray eyes were distant, unfocused, her head tilted slightly as if straining to hear something only she could perceive. Her lips moved soundlessly, and the ring pulsed with gentle silver light, in rhythm with whatever she was hearing. "Sera," Dorian said sharply. She didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge his presence. The guards Dorian had posted stood frozen near the door, their hands on their weapons but their faces confused. One of them stepped forward. "Your Majesty, she's been like this for the past 10 minutes. Won't respond. Just keep staring and—" "Leave us," Dorian commanded. The guards exchanged glances but obeyed, filing out quickly and closing the door behind them. Elion arrived moments later, breathless despite his supernatural stamina, but Dorian raised a hand to stop him from entering. This moment felt private, sacred somehow. Dorian approached Sera slowly, the way one might approach a wild creature, careful not to startle her. "Sera," he said again, softer this time, "can you hear me?" Her eyes focused suddenly, snapping to his face with an intensity that made him stop mid-step. But there was something different about her gaze, something that looked almost like recognition, not of him, but through him. "She's trying to tell me something," Sera whispered, her voice carrying an odd echo, as if two people were speaking in harmony. "She's been trying since I found the ring, but I couldn't hear her clearly until now. Until I came here." Dorian's chest tightened. "Who?" But he already knew. "Your mother." Sera's fingers trembled around the ring. "Queen Vespera, she's here. Not here like we are, but—" She struggled for words. "Like a memory that refuses to fade, like a song that keeps playing even after the music stops. Drop a crown in the comments if you believe love can transcend even death itself." Dorian forced himself to breathe, though he didn't need to. "What does she say?" Sera closed her eyes, and when she spoke again, her voice took on a different quality. Older, wiser, with an accent that made Dorian's heart stop. It was his mother's accent, the specific cadence of old nobility that had died out decades ago. "My son has built walls so high he can no longer see the sky," Sera said, the words clearly not her own. "He thinks isolation is strength. He thinks silence is safety. But he is dying inside, one silent year at a time, and he doesn't even know it." Dorian staggered backward. "Stop!" Sera's eyes opened, still hers, still gray, but filled with a warmth and sorrow that belonged to someone else. "She says you were 7 years old when you fell from the oak tree in the eastern gardens. Broke your arm. You cried, not because of the pain, but because you'd been climbing to reach a bird's nest, and the fall destroyed it." The memory hit him like a physical blow. No one knew that story. His mother had been the only one there that day, had healed his arm with magic and helped him rebuild the nest before the mother bird returned. No one living could know that detail. "She says," Sera continued, tears streaming down her face, though she didn't seem to notice. "She says you used to have nightmares after your father died, used to wake up screaming. She would sit beside your bed and sing you a lullaby." Sera's voice shifted, and she began humming a melody Dorian hadn't heard in over a century. The lullaby his mother had created just for him, never written down, never shared with anyone else. Dorian's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the bed, his hands gripping the fabric hard enough to tear it. His crimson eyes were wide, his composure, that iron control he'd maintained for 100 years, shattering like glass. "How?" His voice broke on the word. "How do you know these things?" Sera wiped at her tears with shaking hands. "I don't know them. She knows them. She's showing me. It's like she's living in my head when I hold the ring. I see what she saw, feel what she felt." Her gray eyes locked onto his. "She loves you so much it hurts, even now, even from wherever she is." Dorian spun away, his hand pressed against his chest as if trying to hold something together that was breaking apart. For the first time in a century, his shoulders shook. For the first time since Cassandra's betrayal, since his mother's murder, since he'd sworn never to feel again. He trembled. "This isn't real," he whispered, though the words held no conviction. "You're manipulating me, using information you gathered somehow. This is some scheme." "She says you blame yourself for her death," Sera interrupted gently, "that you think if you'd been stronger, faster, more powerful, you could have saved her. But she wants you to know." Her voice cracked. "She wants you to know it wasn't your fault, that she chose to use her last magic to protect you instead of herself, that it was her choice, and she'd make it again." Dorian's hand clenched into a fist, his nails drawing blood from his palm. "Stop. She says the only thing that breaks her heart now is watching you punish yourself, watching you lock yourself away from everything that makes life worth living." I said stop. The command cracked through the room with supernatural force, making the windows rattle and the torches flare. But Sera didn't flinch. Instead, she walked toward him, this fragile mortal girl approaching a vampire king on the edge of losing control, and did something that froze him in place. She placed her hand over his heart. The ring pressed between them and warmth flooded through Dorian's chest. Not heat, warmth. The kind he'd only ever felt in his mother's presence, when the world was still safe and love was still possible. "She's not trying to hurt you," Sera whispered. "She's trying to free you. If you're crying right now, you're not alone." Hit that like button to show Dorian he's not alone either. Dorian looked down at this girl, this impossible, brave, terrifying girl, and felt his carefully constructed walls begin to crack. Not collapse, not yet, but fracture, letting in slivers of light he'd kept locked out for decades. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, his voice raw. "I don't know how to let anyone in again. Every time I've tried, it's destroyed me." "I know," Sera said softly, and the way she said it, with such certainty, made him realize she wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. His mother's presence, her understanding, her eternal love was flowing through this mortal girl like a conduit. "You were chosen," Dorian said, finally accepting what he'd been fighting since the moment she appeared in his throne room. "The prophecy, the ring, all of it. My mother planned this." Sera nodded. "She says she couldn't save you herself, so she did the next best thing. She left you a way to save yourself." She paused, her gray eyes searching his crimson ones. "But you have to choose it, Dorian. She can't force you. The prophecy can't force you. I can't force you." "Choose what?" "To stop hiding." The words settled over him like snow, cold and unavoidable. Before he could respond, another sharp crack echoed through the castle, closer this time. The dark magic Cassandra was wielding to break through the wards was getting stronger, more focused. She would reach them soon. Eleon burst into the room. "Your Majesty, Cassandra has breached the outer defenses. She's demanding to see you, demanding you hand over the thief." His eyes flickered to Sera. "She means to kill her." Dorian's entire body went rigid. The trembling stopped. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something cold and deadly and absolute. He turned to face Eleon, and his eyes blazed with power that made the air crackle. "Then Cassandra Luna has just made her last mistake." He looked back at Sera, at this girl who carried his mother's ring and voice and love. This girl who had survived impossible wards and spoken impossible truths. This girl who terrified him not because she was dangerous, but because she made him want to tear down every wall he'd ever built. "Stay here," he commanded. "Don't leave this room. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Eleon." Sera's eyes widened. "Where are you going?" Dorian's smile was sharp and cold and utterly merciless. to remind Cassandra why even dark magic fears the vampire king. As he strode from the room with Elian at his heels, one thought burned through his mind. Cassandra could threaten him, could attack his kingdom, could destroy everything he'd built, but she would not touch Sera, not while he still existed to prevent it. The walls around his heart might be cracking, might be letting in dangerous things like hope and feeling and vulnerability, but they were still strong enough to protect what mattered. The great hall of Voss Castle trembled as Cassandra Luna strode through the shattered main doors, dark magic swirling around her like a living storm. She was magnificent and terrible, crimson gown flowing like blood, violet eyes blazing with fury, her power crackling through the air with enough force to make the ancient stone walls groan. Behind her, the castle's outer wards lay in smoking ruins, testament to the raw, magical strength she'd unleashed. Dorian stood waiting at the center of the hall, perfectly still, his crimson eyes fixed on the woman who had once held his heart. "Cassandra," he said, his voice carrying supernatural resonance that made the shadows deepen. "You've made a grave mistake coming here." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "A mistake? No, darling. The mistake was yours, believing you could keep what belongs to me." Her gaze swept the hall, searching. "Where is she? Where's the little thief who stole Vespera's ring?" "Sera stole nothing," Dorian replied, his tone dropping to something deadly. "The ring chose her. My mother's magic recognized her, something it never did for you." The words landed like a slap. Cassandra's beautiful face twisted with rage. "Vespera promised me that ring, promised me a place in this bloodline, and you self-righteous fool, you threw me out before I could claim what was mine." "You tried to usurp my throne," Dorian said coldly. "You used our relationship as a weapon. What did you expect?" "I expected you to share your power." Cassandra's magic flared, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the marble floor. "I loved you, Dorian, truly loved you. But you were so consumed by grief over Vespera, so locked away in your pathetic mourning, that you couldn't see what I offered. We could have ruled together, could have been unstoppable." "You never loved me," Dorian said quietly. "You loved what I represented, the power, the throne, the legacy." His eyes hardened. "And when I discovered your true intentions, you cursed me, bound my heart with dark magic so I could never feel again. Did you think I'd forgotten?" Cassandra's smile turned cruel. "That curse was a gift, darling. It protected you from the pain of loving anyone else, made sure that if I couldn't have your heart, no one could." Her eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "But now some mortal child has awakened what 70 years of magic kept locked away. How pathetic you've become. Drop a in the comments if you think Cassandra severely underestimated what Dorian would do to protect Sera." "Last warning," Dorian said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Leave my castle, leave this kingdom, and never speak Sera's name again." "Or what?" Cassandra challenged, dark magic gathering in her palms. "You'll destroy me? You couldn't even destroy your feelings for me, not completely. That's why the curse worked so well, because part of you still—" "I feel nothing for you," Dorian interrupted, and the absolute certainty in his voice made Cassandra falter. "Nothing but contempt for what you did, what you took from me." Cassandra's composure cracked. "Fine, then you won't mind when I take something from you now." She moved with supernatural speed, vanishing from the hall in a blur of motion and reappearing outside the East Tower. Dorian's enhanced senses tracked her immediately, but she'd anticipated that, had drawn him into conversation specifically to gauge the tower's location. "No!" Dorian roared, his own speed carrying him after her, but Cassandra was already ascending, her magic tearing through the guards he'd posted like they were made of paper. She reached Sera's door and blasted it open with a spell that sent splinters flying. Sera stood in the center of the room, the ring blazing silver in her hand, her gray eyes wide with fear but her stance defiant. She'd heard the commotion, had known this moment was coming. "So you're the one," Cassandra said, her voice dripping with venom as she stepped inside. "The mortal child who thinks she can replace me." "I'm not trying to replace anyone," Sera said, her voice steadier than Dorian would have expected. "I'm just trying to return what belongs to—" "It belongs to me!" Cassandra shrieked and hurled a bolt of dark magic straight at Sera's heart. Time seemed to slow. Sera raised the ring instinctively, and it erupted with light. Not silver this time, but pure gold, blazing with the full force of Vespera's protective magic. The dark spell hit the barrier and disintegrated, and the backlash sent Cassandra stumbling backward. But she recovered quickly, gathering more power, preparing a killing curse that no ring could block. Dorian crashed through the window in an explosion of glass and fury. He placed himself between Cassandra and Sera, and the sheer force of his presence, the raw, undiluted power of the vampire king unleashed, made the entire tower shake. His eyes blazed crimson fire, his fangs were fully extended, and the magic radiating from him was ancient and terrible and absolute. "You will not touch her," he said, each word resonating with supernatural command that made Cassandra's magic falter. For the first time in 70 years, Cassandra saw genuine fear flicker across her face, because the Dorian standing before her wasn't the grief-locked, emotionally dead king she'd cursed decades ago. This Dorian was awake, the walls were down, the feelings were flowing, and the protective fury in his eyes was more terrifying than anything she'd ever witnessed. "Dorian," she started. "You cursed me," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "Bound my heart, stole 70 years of my life, and now you dare come into my home and try to kill the one person who—" He stopped, the realization hitting him mid-sentence. The one person who made him feel again. The one person who mattered. Behind him, Sera watched with wide eyes as Dorian's entire body trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of emotions he'd suppressed for decades, finally breaking free. The curse Cassandra had placed on him was shattering, and she could see it happening. "No," Cassandra whispered, her violet eyes widening with horror. "No, that's impossible. The curse was blood-sealed. Only true love could break." She stopped, understanding dawning with sickening clarity. Dorian loved the mortal girl, maybe not consciously, maybe not even willingly, but the magic didn't lie. The curse was breaking because his heart had chosen Sera, had opened to her in ways it had refused to open for anyone in a century. Hit that subscribe button because what Dorian does next will leave you absolutely speechless. Cassandra's face contorted with rage and betrayal so profound it manifested as physical darkness around her. "If I can't have you, neither can she." She unleashed everything, 70 years of stored power, every dark spell she'd ever mastered, all of it aimed not at Dorian, but at the fragile mortal standing behind him. The world exploded in light and darkness. Cassandra's killing curse, a mass of black energy that devoured everything it touched, screamed through the air toward Sera with unstoppable force. Dorian didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't weigh the consequences. He simply moved. His body blurred between Sera and the curse, and he threw up a barrier of pure bloodline magic, the ancient power of the Voss lineage that he'd been hoarding for a century, using sparingly, keeping locked away. He unleashed all of it. The collision was cataclysmic. Gold and black magic slammed together with enough force to blow out every window in the tower. The stone walls cracked, the floor buckled, and Dorian, immortal, unstoppable, invincible, was driven to his knees by the sheer magnitude of dark power Cassandra had thrown. But he held. The barrier didn't break, didn't even crack, because for the first time in 70 years, Dorian Voss was fighting for something that mattered more than survival. He was fighting for her. The curse shattered completely. Dorian felt it break like chains snapping. The dark magic Cassandra had woven around his heart 70 years ago, disintegrating under the force of genuine emotion. Not manufactured, not manipulated, real, raw, terrifying, overwhelming, love. Drop a spark in the comments if you just felt that curse break in your own soul. The killing curse dissipated, its power spent against Dorian's defense. Cassandra staggered backward, her face pale, her violet eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible, she breathed. That curse was unbreakable, blood-sealed. Only... She stopped, horror and rage warring on her beautiful face. Only true love could shatter it. Dorian rose slowly to his feet, and when he turned to face Cassandra, his crimson eyes blazed with something she'd never seen before. Not anger, not hatred, certainty. "You're right," he said quietly. "True love. The kind you never understood, the kind you were never capable of." He stepped forward, placing himself between Cassandra and Sera once more. "You loved power, control, the idea of me, but you never loved me." "And she does?" Cassandra spat, gesturing wildly at Sera. "That pathetic street rat who's known you for 3 days?" Dorian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced back at Sera, really looked at her, and saw something that made his chest ache in ways he'd forgotten were possible. She wasn't cowering behind him, wasn't hiding. She stood with the ring blazing in her hand, tears streaming down her face, but her gray eyes were fierce, protective, as if she would fight beside him if he asked, as if she would throw herself between him and danger, just as readily as he'd done for her. No one had looked at him like that since his mother died. "It doesn't matter what she feels," Dorian said, turning back to Cassandra. "What matters is what I choose, and I choose her." The words hung in the air like a vow. Cassandra's composure shattered completely. "You're choosing Immortal, a powerless, fragile, temporary creature over everything we could have had?" "Yes," Dorian said simply, "because she's real, because she survived my mother's wards not through ambition or schemes, but because her heart was pure enough to pass the test. The test you failed." Cassandra screamed, a sound of pure rage and betrayal, and dark magic erupted from her body like a tidal wave. "Then you can die with her." She unleashed everything she had left, every ounce of power, every dark spell, all focused into one devastating attack aimed at both of them. But she'd forgotten something crucial. She'd forgotten about Elion Knight. The loyal advisor appeared in the doorway, along with a dozen of the castle's most powerful guards. They formed a semicircle, their combined magic creating a secondary barrier that caught the overflow of Cassandra's attack and redirected it. "Your Majesty," Elion said calmly, as if they weren't standing in a room being torn apart by magical warfare. Perhaps now would be an excellent time to end this. Dorian's lips curved into something cold and merciless. Agreed. He moved with the speed and grace that had made him legendary, crossing the space between himself and Cassandra before she could react. His hand closed around her throat, not to kill, but to drain. Vampire kings had abilities beyond normal vampires. One of them was the power to absorb magic from those they touched. Cassandra's eyes widened in horror as she felt her power being pulled away, siphoned into Dorian like water down a drain. "No, Dorian, please. You had 70 years to disappear," Dorian said coldly. 70 years to build a new life somewhere I would never find you, but you came back, threatened my kingdom, tried to murder an innocent girl." His grip tightened. "And for what? A ring? A throne? Revenge?" "You were supposed to be mine," Cassandra gasped, her power fading, her body weakening. "We were supposed to rule together. You loved me once." "I loved the person I thought you were," Dorian interrupted. But that person never existed. You were always this, hungry, ambitious, willing to destroy anything that threatened your control. He released her, and she collapsed to the floor, powerless. Not dead, he wouldn't give her that mercy, but stripped of the magic that had made her dangerous. If you think Cassandra just got exactly what she deserved, smash that like button right now. Elion, Dorian said without looking away from Cassandra's broken form. Take her to the obsidian cells. Blood wards, no visitors, no magic. She stays there until I decide what permanent fate she's earned. With pleasure, Your Majesty. Elion gestured, and 2 guards hauled Cassandra to her feet. She looked at Dorian one last time, her violet eyes filled with venom. This isn't over. That girl will destroy you. Mortals always do. They die, Dorian. She'll die, and you'll be alone again, and you'll remember that I was right. Remove her, Dorian commanded. The guards dragged her away, her threats fading into echoes down the corridor. Silence fell over the ruined tower. Dorian stood motionless, his back to Sera, his shoulders tense. Now that the immediate danger had passed, now that adrenaline was fading, he was left with the aftermath of what had just happened. The curse was broken. His walls were down, and he could feel everything, a century of suppressed emotions crashing over him like a tsunami. Dorian. Sera's voice was soft, uncertain. He turned slowly to face her. She stood in the center of the destruction, the ring still glowing in her hand, her gray eyes searching his face. Worried, caring, seeing him in ways no one had in decades. You saved me, she whispered. I had to. The words came out rough, raw with emotion he couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't. He stopped, struggling. When I saw that curse coming for you, I didn't think. I just knew that losing you wasn't acceptable. Sera's breath caught. Why? Dorian took a step toward her, then another, until they stood close enough that he could see the silver light of the ring reflected in her eyes. Because somewhere between you appearing in my throne room and standing here now, you became something I didn't think I'd ever have again. He paused, forcing himself to say the words that terrified him. Hope, purpose, a reason to feel instead of just exist. Sera's eyes filled with tears. I'm just a street girl with a stolen ring. No. Dorian's hand lifted, almost of its own accord, and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. The touch sent warmth flooding through him, real, genuine, devastating. You're the girl my mother chose, the girl who survived impossible wards, the girl who made a vampire king remember what it means to care. The ring flared between them, as if Vespera herself was blessing this moment. What happens now? Sera asked. Dorian smiled, the first genuine smile in a century. Now we figure out what my mother's prophecy actually means, together. 3 days after Cassandra's defeat, Dorian stood in his mother's private study, staring at the prophecy that had orchestrated everything. The parchment still glowed with Vespera's magic, but now the words felt different, not like a manipulation, but like a gift, a mother's final act of love for a son she knew would lose his way. Your Majesty? Elion's voice came from the doorway. Miss Trace is asking to see you. Dorian's chest tightened, that now familiar sensation he was still learning to navigate. 3 days of feeling everything after a century of numbness was overwhelming. Every emotion hit harder, cut deeper, meant more, especially when it came to her. Send her in, he said quietly. Sera entered hesitantly, the ring on a chain around her neck now, glowing softly against her skin. She'd been given proper clothes, a simple dress of deep blue that made her gray eyes luminous, and regular meals had already begun to fill out her gaunt frame. But it was her expression that caught him, nervous, uncertain, almost sad. You're leaving, Dorian said, understanding immediately. Sera's eyes widened. How did you... I can see it in your face. He turned to fully face her. "You think the prophecy is complete. The curse is broken. The ring has been returned. Your part in this story is over." She looked down at her hands. "I don't belong here, Dorian. I'm not royalty, not powerful. I'm just a girl from the streets who happened to fall into the right crypt at the right time." "You're the girl my mother chose," Dorian corrected, moving closer. "The girl who survived wards designed to kill. The girl who heard a dead queen's voice and was brave enough to listen. The girl who stood between me and Cassandra's curse, even though you had no power to defend yourself. Drop a heart in the comments if you think Sera has no idea how extraordinary she truly is." "I didn't do anything special," Sera protested. "The ring did all the protecting. Your mother's magic." "Chose you," Dorian interrupted firmly. "Magic doesn't make mistakes, Sera. It doesn't randomly select people. My mother embedded the last of her power into that ring and set conditions for who could claim it. Pure of heart, brave enough to face danger, selfless enough to return what wasn't theirs." He stopped directly in front of her. "That's not chance. That's character." Sera's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't understand why. Why me? I'm nobody. I've spent my whole life being invisible, forgotten, passed over. Why would a queen's magic recognize someone like me?" Dorian's expression softened in a way it never had for anyone but his mother. "Because being overlooked by the world doesn't mean you're invisible to magic, to destiny, to—" He paused, the words catching in his throat. "To me." Sera must have heard what he couldn't say, because fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Dorian, I can't stay. You're a vampire king. Immortal, powerful, and I'm—" She gestured helplessly at herself. "I'm mortal, temporary. In 50 years, you'll still be exactly as you are now, and I'll be old or dead or—" "Do you think I don't know that?" Dorian's voice came out rougher than intended. "Do you think I haven't spent the last 3 days wrestling with exactly that reality?" The admission hung between them. Sera's breath caught. "Then you understand why I have to go. Before this, whatever this is, becomes something that will hurt us both." "No." The word was quiet but absolute. "I don't understand that at all." He closed the remaining distance between them, and Sera's back hit the bookshelf gently. She looked up at him with those storm-gray eyes that had haunted him since the moment she'd appeared in his throne room. "Elian revealed the rest of my mother's prophecy," Dorian said quietly. "The part she sealed separately. The part meant only for me." Sera's eyes widened. "What did it say?" "That the mortal girl who carries the ring isn't just meant to break my curse." He reached up, his fingers ghosting along her cheek with devastating gentleness. "She's meant to restore the Voss bloodline magic, and there's only one way to do that." "How?" Sera whispered. "By binding herself to it, by becoming part of the bloodline through an ancient ritual that will transform her." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "By becoming immortal." The words dropped between them like stones into still water. Sera's mouth opened, then closed. That's impossible." "My mother was the most powerful sorceress in vampire history," Dorian said. "She spent her final years researching transformation magic specifically for this purpose. The ritual is complex, dangerous, and requires—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Requires what?" Sera pressed. "Requires that I claim you fully, in every way that matters." His crimson eyes burned into hers. "Marriage, blood bond, magical union. It's not something that can be done halfway, Sera. If we begin the ritual, you'll be bound to me for eternity. To this castle, this kingdom, this life. If your heart just stopped, hit that subscribe button because this choice will define everything." Sera's hands trembled. "You're asking me to give up my mortality, my freedom, my chance at a normal life?" "No." Dorian's voice softened. I'm offering you a choice, the same choice my mother wanted you to have. You can walk away. Take gold, resources, protection. I'll give you anything you need to build a life somewhere safe. You'll never want for anything. Or, Sera's voice was barely audible, or you stay. You undergo the ritual. You become immortal. You become... He struggled with the word. Mine. My queen. My partner. My... He couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. But Sera said it for him. Your love, she whispered. Dorian's composure cracked. I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to love someone without destroying them or being destroyed. The last time I opened my heart, it led to 70 years of cursed emptiness. I can't promise I'll be good at this. Can't promise I won't make mistakes or push you away when fear gets too loud. Sera's hand lifted, pressing against his chest where his heart beat, steady, strong, alive in ways it hadn't been in a century. Then we'll figure it out together, she said simply. You'd give up mortality for me? Dorian asked, disbelief and hope warring in his expression. For a vampire king you've known less than a week? I'd give up mortality for the man who threw himself in front of a killing curse to protect me, Sera corrected. For the man whose mother trusted me with her final magic. For the man who sees me, truly sees me, when the whole world looked through me like I was glass. Her gray eyes glistened. I've been surviving my whole life, Dorian. Maybe it's time I actually lived. Something broke open in Dorian's chest. The last wall, the final defense, the ultimate protection against feeling too much. It shattered completely. I choose you, he said, his voice rough with emotion he no longer tried to hide. Not because of prophecy or magic or destiny. I choose you because when I look at you, I remember what it means to hope, to feel, to want something more than just endless existence. Sera smiled through her tears. Then I choose you, too. The ring around her neck blazed with golden light, Vespera's magic recognizing the choice, blessing it, celebrating it. The light wrapped around both of them like approval from beyond the grave. Dorian kissed her then, soft and careful and achingly tender, pouring a century of suppressed emotion into that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, Sera whispered against his lips, "What happens now?" Dorian smiled, that genuine expression that still felt new and precious. Now we restore the bloodline, we complete the prophecy, and we prove that the ring was never just about destiny. What was it about? Sera asked, letting my heart live again. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers, and learning that some loves are worth waiting a century for. The prophecy had been fulfilled, the curse was broken, and the vampire king, who had sworn never to love again, had finally found something more powerful than his vow. He'd found someone worth breaking it for. In the shadows of Umbra City, a homeless girl and an immortal king proved that destiny is just another word for love that refuses to die. The end. Did this story touch your heart? Show us by hitting that like button. Want more epic tales of magic, destiny, and impossible love? Subscribe and join our community of story lovers. And drop crown and heart in the comments if you believe true love is worth any sacrifice. We love hearing from you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.